So now recording, and that's for sure. So very good evening, everyone. Welcome back to our second tasting of our Portuguese box. And tonight we have two red wines. And the idea here is to try to identify regionality and climatic influences, where we should be able to point it out where those wines could be coming from. Okay, that's the idea of this tasting. It's quite difficult, quite hard to spot a Portuguese wine according to its variety, as the majority of wines are blended as opposed to single varietal. In some cases, we can find a single varietal wine coming from either Monsanto Melgaço, like 100% Alvarinho, or maybe if you have a Touriga Nacional. But the vast majority of wines are blended based. So presuming that you have all tasted your wines, who can share with me your thoughts on the first wine?
Me, Thiago.
Go on.
The first one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the first one for me, it's Ruby Pale. I think the aromas, the intensity of aromas is medium plus. Some mint, some dusty, some red fruit like strawberries and raspberries, red cherries. But the fruit's not so ripe and not jammy. It's in a good way. A little bit of blackberry for me. It's more a fruit-driven wine, but I think that maybe there's some use of oak. That's why I feel some dustiness on the wine. Maybe it's because of this. For me, it's a little bit different of some hot climates in Portugal. It's different from the regions that they are hot and the fruit is jammy and ripe or overripe.
Good.
It's a fruit in an elegant way.
Okay. And how about the palate itself?
The palate for me, it's dry wine. Medium plus acidity, medium plus alcohol. The tannins are chalky, I think. Medium plus, they are all over my mouth. For me, medium plus body, medium flavor intensity. The concentration is medium. It's a medium plus finish. For me, it's the alcohol and the tannins are a little unbalanced with the wine. For me, it's a good wine. For me, it's suitable for their aging, for bottle aging. Maybe because I think this alcohol and these tannins are going to settle down, and there's a good acidity here and a good amount of tannins to go further and maybe a little bit for maybe 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
That's what I thought about this wine.
And how about the quality?
For me, good. It's a good. For me, it's good and suitable for bottle aging.
Okay.
I think it's going to be better
Good.
because of the tannins, the alcohol, and the acidity. But I think the tannins and the alcohol are unbalanced in the wine.
Okay. Thank you very much, Bruno. Anybody else would you like to comment on this wine? Jude, Chris, Thiago, George, Ellen?
I felt this wine more in the black fruit side.
Mm-hmm.
Some red, but mostly black, and the palate quite the same as Bruno, except so the finish.
Mm-hmm.
I felt it medium minus.
Okay.
Okay, and for me it's a good wine too, but not suitable for Asian.
Why?
Because in the mouth, it's basically the wood. The
Mm-hmm.
fruit is weak in the mouth, and I felt a little unbalanced. Uh, Wood and fruit in the mouth. It's not it's not very integrated of the flavors, and I think it's you get worst. You get you not it will not get better.
Yeah. Okay. And how about, does anybody else would like to add or any comment to this wine? Any sign of climate or sort of influence? No. Can you use any note of your tasting note to point out climatic influences? Maybe soil, maybe, I don't know, altitude, latitude, close to the ocean. Can you point that out?
I think the unique thing that I can imagine that it's not from a very hot region. I think
Why?
it's not overwhelming tannin or fruit, not jammy fruit.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it doesn't seem from a very hot climate region.
Yeah, but how can you make a link? How can you say it's not coming from Douro? It's not coming from Alentejo. Why?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe there is some cooling influence in the region, maybe
Why?
altitude or because the fruit's not very powerful. I think the tannins are not very powerful. So I think there is some cool influence. It's not the fruit's not jamming.
So it's
Maybe.
very important that you make this link, because I think that the climatic influence here is coming from a moderated climate with some, I don't know, diurnal difference, time temperature difference, because although it still has high acidity, because of the change of temperature, the tannins are quite, I don't know, fine. The fruit is not jammy, it's not overripe. It's also the picking time has a difference here. You know, they didn't pick in a very, they didn't pick with a high concentration of bricks. They decided to pick on the optimum ripeness, so they were able to preserve the fruits as well as so. So it's important that you are able to link those things that you pick up on your tasting, and describe if you need to justify regionality, climatic influence, and so on and so on. So you need to force that. You need to learn how to describe that, how to justify that, because those are the sort of questions that fall into the exam. The next examination here is the D4. There will be a question for sure about how that wine was made. Is it traditional method? Why? Can you taste autolysis? Is it a Charmat method? Why? Can you taste the absence of autolysis? It's important that you're able to link that. Good. Okay. And how about the second wine? Can you share your thoughts on the second wine?
Can I?
Yeah,
Maybe
sure.
me?
Go on.
Yeah. Okay. About appearance, I think it's medium ruby.
Mm-hmm.
The nose um, has medium intensity. Um, the aromas, I caught some blackberry, red cherry, strawberry, and some aromas from the wood, charred wood, cloves, and some black pepper, I think.
Okay.
Mm, the mouth, the wine is dry. I think it has high acidity. The tannins are medium and ripe. The alcohol, I think, is high. The body, medium plus. Flavor intensity, medium plus. And it has a long finish. I think it's a very good wine. I think it's better than the previous one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's suitable for bottle aging. I think it has fruit concentration, tannins and acidity enough to bottle age for some time.
Cool. Can you mention? Can you guess? Or not guess, but can you identify any natural influence to this wine? Perhaps grape variety, perhaps regionality.
It's difficult.
Okay, guys, list the grape varieties from the red grape varieties produced in Portugal that you know of. Write down a piece of paper. What are the grape varieties from Portugal that you know of?
Touriga Nacional, Tinta Roriz,
Okay.
Aga.
Okay.
What else?
Do you know the characteristics of those grape varieties? Can anyone help me with Touriga Nacional?
I think it's difficult to beat Touriga because Touriga has a lot of pigments, so it gives a lot of color to wine, a lot of tannins, high acidity.
Acidity, tannins, what else? If you get a
High
glass...
intensity of aromas.
Pardon?
High intensity of aromas.
Oh yeah, it's quite lit, it's quite aromatic. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, I think this wine is not quite aromatic.
And it's quite plummy. I mean, the characteristics of Touriga Nacional, it's a quite plummy wine, quite plush in a way. And Tinta Roriz, what's the characteristics of Tinta Roriz?
Tinta Roriz has black and red fruits, medium tannins. It depends on the winemaking technique, but sort of medium tannins, medium alcohol.
It could be quite high in alcohol. What's the other name of Tinta Roriz?
Tempranillo.
Tempranillo.
Is it Tempranillo?
Yeah.
I need to sort out. If I'm not mistaken, it is
Aragonês.
No, let me find out.
Aragonês em Alentejo, Tinta Roriz no Douro.
Tinta Roriz no Douro, Aragonês no
Tempranillo in Spain. Yeah.
Cool. Tempranillo in Spain.
So so therefore we get medium plus at maximum of acidity. Okay. What else do we know? What are the other grape varieties?
Yeah. I think maybe it could be maybe Baga because of the high acidity. I think the tannins are not too intense, but you can make intense wines in tannins from Baga. But I feel it could be Baga because of the high acidity and not so jammy fruit and intense fruit flavor.
Is it a blended wine, or is it does it taste like a varietal, a single varietal, or does it taste like a blended wine?
It's difficult, hard to tell.
No, we tasted from Argentina an amazing wine that was a blended wine. So you well know the difference between a single varietal wine and a blended. So
I don't know, really.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's leave it. All right, so if we were to compare those two wines, what would be how would you describe and contrast the first wine and the second wine? What are the key differences between them?
Thiago,
as a wine in itself, not just the aromas, as a wine in itself.
for me,
okay.
No, go.
No. I think the second wine is a better quality wine. I think it's more balanced. I think the first wine was not very balanced between tannins, acidity, and the fruit. I think it's more balanced, but it's not too intense on the nose. But in the mouth, it has more intensity and a long finish. So I think it's better quality and more balanced. So maybe a blend, I don't know, because it's well balanced. It's not too obvious in one grape variety characteristic, but it reminds me wine made from Baga, maybe.
Okay.
Difference between the wines, could we say fruit ripeness because of the climate, difference of extraction between both wines. The second one is more extracted. Different occasion. The second wine, at least some of the second wine could be used could be passed in new barrels. The first one, just a little bit of old barrels. That's it for me, the difference between the two.
I would go more like, if you may allow me, I would go like, well, the first wine, it's more of a pale ruby with some garnet hint color, which makes me think that perhaps it doesn't have much of extraction, or maybe it's coming from a cooler climate influence, because there is no much of pigmentation to the wine. Also, it could be made from grape varieties that has a thin skin. So that's what is going through my mind. So also the fact that it has some sort of a garnet hint, it tells me that maybe it's a wine that has seen a little bit of bottle aging, you know. Then once I taste the wine, I realize that it's a wine that has high acidity, medium body, moderated alcohol, like a 13% alcohol. And it has like a medium concentration, medium finish. So, it does has some sort of a primary, secondary, and tertiary aroma. So it's a developing wine. It does have some mellowness to the wine. Like it does, I'm able to taste a maturity. The tannins are quite a medium, but they're grainy, so I can feel the tannins. But they're a little bit loose into the palate, but they're grainy, like are not well polished. And I think it's a good quality wine. It doesn't have much of fruit at the back palate, but it does has a little bit of tertiary and savory, spicy flavors to the back end. And it has a medium intensity of aromas. So when I get a wine that has medium intensity of aromas, it reminds me of Bordeaux straight away. Like Bordeaux great wines, they have medium aromas of intensity, medium body, medium plus acidity, like a medium tannins. It's all medium. And this wine is more or less all medium. So it reminds me of Bordeaux in a way, somehow. And then when I think of the second wine, and when I compare to the second wine has a deeper color. So you may say it's medium. I would go rather and say it's deep. It's ruby, it's deep. It has medium plus intensity of aromas. Does it say anything, medium plus intensity of aromas? Is there any grape variety that can lift the aromatic of a wine? So it has medium plus intensity of aromas, more on the red side, a little bit of dark side as well as, but I can't say, oh, it's Touriga Nacional because I can get plum. You know, I can't say that because many grape varieties can have the same sort of aromas. So that's not the point here. But it's dry, it has full body. It's totally the opposite. It has full body, but the same sort of a moderated alcohol, 13% alcohol. High acidity. It has medium plus intensity of aromas, medium plus finish. The tannins are medium plus, but they're quite tight, quite neat, quite well built, as opposed to the other one. You know, the second wine has a more of a polished tannins, and the first one was quite loose, quite grainy. So there's a difference in tannins here, and there's a difference of structure. So the first wine is quite thin, slim, vertical, and the second wine is quite built to impress. You know what I mean? So that's the second wine. The aromas and flavors, they can vary a little bit, but I get more of the tertiary aromas to the first wine, more maturity to the first wine, and I get more fruit intensity on the second wine. And that story is telling me right from the very first impression when I look to the color and I see all that intensity of color. So those are two wines that has high acidity in different level of quality and maturity, and also of quality, because one has medium concentration, the other one has medium plus concentration. So thinking that I have a wine that has a lot of a concentration but high acidity and moderated alcohol, so I'm thinking that the second wine perhaps was either planted in a region that has a very good variation, daytime variation, so they can enjoy a lot of sunshine in the day and very cool nights in the night. So it can preserve acidity while it's gaining concentration, okay, of flavor, because concentration of color you can get from the skin winemaking technique, but concentration of flavor, there's a few techniques that you can do. You can do, is it a winemaker here? No, you can do some bleeding or kind of sangria, so that you can preserve, concentrate flavors. That's one of the things that you can do. You can use some petsin, so you can extract a little bit more flavors from the skin and so on. But I don't think it's the case. I think it's the quality of the grape varieties. Simple as that. Also, the second wine has some smokiness, a little bit of toastiness, a little bit of coffee beans somehow. So it tells me that it has a little bit of oak aging to the wine. The first wine, I doubt that it has seen any brand new barrels. Perhaps some big old casks, some perhaps, but not really brand new. I don't think so. If there is, very, very slow quantity. But I think the first wine is more mature than the second. So at that stage, it would be quite difficult, quite hard to see the influence of brand new oak to the first wine. And then we need to try to understand what can we use from our tasting notes to talk about climatic influence or regionality. So write down on the other side of the piece of paper the regions that you know that produce red wines in Portugal, that are mainly known for their red wines. Which ones are they? So you're facing with a red wine coming from Portugal. You need to know where is it coming from. How can you start narrowing down the regionality? How can you do that? So you need to eliminate and start by writing a list. Would you mind sharing with me the list of the regions that make red wines in Portugal? Maybe Cecilia can help me.
Without peeking, right?
Without picking, yes.
Okay, so this is not the case, but we start with Minho, then we go to Douro, Dão, Lafões would not be the case, Beira Interior, Bairrada, Algarve, Lisboa, Itejo. What else? The one on the bottom, the hot one. Shit, with the letter A. What's the name of that?
Alentejo.
No, not Alentejo, on the way south.
Setúbal.
No.
Algarve.
Algarve.
Okay.
Algarve, which is not the case also, but, and that's about it.
Okay.
Whatever.
So guys, we have all those regions. Does any of those two wines taste like a Douro? Does the first one or the second one taste like a Douro wine? What's the characteristic of a Douro wine?
High acidity.
Acidity, yeah.
Of fruit.
A lot of concentration of fruits. Yes, that's correct. What else?
High tannin.
High tannins. But how about the texture of the tannins?
Quite soft.
Quite soft. Do you think that the tannins of the first wine or the second wine meets the identity of Douro wines?
No.
Okay, so cross that out. So it's definitely not Douro. Okay. So how about Dão? What's the characteristic of Dão wines?
The second one could be Dão.
Why?
Because the diurnal range, temperature, it's cool night in hot days, maybe medium to high altitude.
Okay.
Good influence. So it has high acidity.
Sure.
And good concentration of fruit too.
Okay. And what are the characteristics of what the major grape varieties planted in Dão?
Touriga Nacional.
Okay.
Tinta Roriz, I think.
Francheiro. Caen. Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. If I say to you, it could be Dão. However, what's the characteristics of wines made in Bairrada?
High acidity, high tannin.
Acidity, high tannins.
Rustic.
Quite rustic, yeah. And usually Bairrada wines, are they single varietal, like 100% Baga, or Baga major component, or is usually a blend of like a 5-6 grape varieties?
Bairrada, it's almost single varietal.
Right. Does any of those two wines taste like a Baga, like a single varietal?
No, I don't think so.
So you just cross that out.
But that's not true, Bruno. It's not single varietal. Okay, Pato does it with his Baga stuff, but usually it's field blend. They get it all together in there. Now with the newer guys are trying to separate it, but it's field blend. It used to be field blend.
But almost in Bairrada, they almost get more Baga than other things. Maybe in the past they did a lot of blended stuff or blended vineyards with a lot of grape varieties, but I don't think they do this now. So it's a young wine. So for me, it's almost, I exclude baga from this. I don't think it's single varietal. But when just talk about down and it's blend and maybe the soft ripe tannins or the things that they said about the high diurnals and use, I think the down has a lot of mountains. I think that maybe it's the region of Portugal that has more higher altitudes vineyards, maybe like 1,000 meters above the sea level. So I think just pretty found a way to go with the wine.
Bajada, they can be quite rustic, and also usually Bajada wines, they're quite ample with regards to the mouthfeel. You know, the heavy clays, they make wines that has a lot of body. That's one of the characteristics. So if you think of Saint-Emilion, Pomerol, these are wines with a lot of concentration and fuller body. I don't think it's the case of any of those wines. And then what could be the characteristics of Tejo, previously known as Ribantejo, and Lisbon? What the characteristic of those wines? First, where are they in a map? So you have Portugal. Where are they in a map?
Middle.
Yeah. What else can you say? Just think of climatic influence.
Ocean influence near the Atlantic.
All right. So if you get a wine that was made close to the Atlantic, what's the influence of what it tastes like? Anna, what's the characteristic of a red wine that was planted very close to the ocean? Anna, Cristina, what's the characteristic?
You're asking me? Okay. Well, you expect more wine that has freshness, maybe some kind of salinity to it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, you could have a little bit of alcohol moderation, but would you have all that fruit that we have on the second wine? Do you think that a wine that was made close to the ocean would have all that concentration of fruit? Does it make sense?
Maybe not.
Maybe not. Some wines that are close to the ocean, like south of Italy, they do have a lot of concentration, but it comes with alcohol, right? And it comes with residual sugar. So, you know, just to be fair, you know, we can't say all wines are like that. But usually the wines from Lisbon and the wines from Tejo, these are more cheap entry-level wines, early drinking wines, because they can have high tannins, but usually not with that polishment of the second wine, and usually not with that concentration. So it miss substance, okay, which we can find in both wines. So cross that out. So what's the characteristics of wines made in Alentejo and Beira Interior? Can you guys talk about? Anyone? Please.
I think they are powerful with full body, high tannins.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fruit.
Okay, so very good. So what would be the difference between Douro and Alentejo? So you've got two wines, Douro and Alentejo. What's the difference between them?
Alentejo is a much warmer climate.
Much warmer. Yeah. So what's the acidity level?
Lower.
Yeah, much lower than these. And is there any other thing of characteristic once you smell the wine without even tasting, you smell the wine and say, this is definitely Alentejo?
We usually get the ripe fruit, unless it's from that cooler part. But usually, you spot it's the whole thing in the. I think that's it. The ripe fruit.
The wood also.
The what?
The wood.
Wood?
Some producers, they like wood,
Oh,
but
yes, some do.
but you know, many other regions they produce wine that has been aged in oak, so you can't say just the oak. Have you heard of a grape variety called Trincadeira? So Trincadeira is like either you love or you hate it. Some producers they love it, and it's very true to Alentejo, so it's quite popular in Alentejo. Some producers hate it, like a Quinta do Carmo, like a Júlio Bastos. Júlio Bastos can't stand to Trincadeira, so he would rather make wines without Trincadeira at all. He wouldn't even drink it. But Trincadeira has this sort of a minty, this sort of vegetal to the main aroma and main palate, and this sort of a eucalyptus or vegetable that adds to the wine, this sort of freshness to the main palate, is sometimes one of the substitute of the acidity, because those wines from Alentejo, they usually make wines that has like a medium plus acidity. So as we said, quite big, and the tannins are quite soft and silk and smooth. So that's Alentejo. Also 14 plus alcohol level. None of those two wines resemble a wine that has 14% alcohol. So we could cross that out, Alentejo. Definitely no Alentejo. So what can we talk about? How can we position the wine somewhere? Have you seen any note on your descriptor that could justify Beira Anterior and down on one of those two wines? And by the way, do you know where you guys do know where is Beira Interior, right? Right on top of Alentejo, which shares the same grape varieties, same characteristics, but usually Beira Interior, it's more on a cooler spot. It's further north, so the north you go, the cooler it becomes, and it has some ocean influence, and therefore you are able to produce wines with high acidity, but with the same sort of a lighter style of Alentejo, better saying. Can you taste that on any of those two wines?
Yeah, the wines reminds me a little bit of Dawn.
Mm-hmm. Which one of them reminds you of Dawn? The first or the second?
Yeah, I think maybe the second one that I said.
Shall we uncover the wines, and by uncovering it, we can discuss it further? Yeah.
Okay.
Right. How about the first wine? There you go. So the first wine is a wine coming from a region that it's not well known or very popular in Brazil, but it's called Beira Interior. And it's a producer called Quinta dos Termos. He's a leading producer of organic and moving towards biodynamic quite some time now. And yeah, it has this sort of Touriga Nacional, Tinta Roriz, a little bit Trincadeira, so this sort of vegetable that I get on the main palate. It's one of the characteristics of the wines coming from Alentejo. However, this lightness, moderated alcohol, and high acidity, it's one of the tricks to get into Beira Interior, perhaps. And the second wine is a wine that you probably have tasted already, have tasted before. So it's a wine coming from Down. It's a Down Reserva 2013. So while the first wine it's 2016 vintage, the second wine is 2013 vintage. So the first wine is much younger, but tastes slightly older, more mature, as opposed to the second wine, which is slightly older, but it still tastes quite young in a way, like still developing. So that's quite important, because when you think of quality, and you go into Bordeaux, for example, when you get a Grand Cru Classé wine, the first wine of the house, usually it's a wine that once you taste after 20 years, you still taste the wine and go like, it's too young, undrinkable. That it needs more time, the tannins, even the aromas, the development of aromas. That's the case of the down. So the aromas are still developing into tertiary. The wines is smoothing out. I mean, the tannins are there, quite smooth, but there is still room for improvement. And the tertiary flavors is still not there yet. But you get a second or third wine from the same producer that has a little bit more mellow. And after 5 years, the wine is mature, it's quite round, it's quite soft, which is the case of the first wine. That is also an argument towards quality. So some students, some professionals, they like the tertiary aromas, and all wines that has tertiary characteristics usually are very good and outstanding. And in this case, it's not outstanding. It's a good wine that is tasting really well now, but it's not outstanding. And it is at peak. It's drinking now. So I'm still drinking. I opened this bottle yesterday. I'm still drinking tonight. But that's it. If I had 100 bottles in my shop to sell it, I'll be quite worried, because that's the best time for the wine to be drunk. Where in the second wine, there's still room for improvement to develop tertiary aromas and so on and so on. It has high acidity, it has medium plus fruit concentration, it has medium plus finish. So there's room for improvement. Does it make sense? Do you think that by knowing the wines now, do they really represent the regionality of where they're coming from, or even the grape varieties?
I think that Kelman is the, let's say, the modern down. The old ones would take way more time to get at the point that this.
Yeah, I totally agree. It is Touriga Nacional, it is Tinta Roriz, and what else? Yeah, Touriga Nacional, Tinta Roriz, and it has a little bit of Afranchero. It is also 12 months of oak barrels aged, probably brand new, not all of them, that's for sure. And 13% alcohol level, so quite moderated. But hey, it's a wine that it is 80 years old, so it's quite old now.
Yeah, I thought the second wine was much younger, like 2016, something like that.
For sure. Impressive. Yeah, but the quality is one of the quality of the wine, the tannins, the concentration, that could also make you think that the wine is much older than you actually think it is. So that's one of the tricks if you were to guess a vintage. But at the WSET, they're not asking you to guess vintage unless you are faced with wines from Bordeaux or Burgundy, and they have like 3 wines from Bordeaux, and they want you to mention the vintage. So then is the kind of thing that you could mention, that's a very high quality wine, therefore should be 2015, it's still quite young. I know this is quite diluted and so on, therefore it could be 2013, something like that. But it's not the case. WSET would never ask you to mention vintage. They could ask you to identify quality and talk about quality. And they would point that out for you very clearly. And if you are within Bordeaux and Burgundy, that shouldn't be difficult for you to talk about quality. Which one is better than the other? Also, by comparing those 2 wines, I believe that all of you were able to identify that the second wine was a much better wine than the first wine. So here is like a good versus very good. Make sense? Okay, good. we discussed yesterday, so I will stop recording now. So please hold on a little bit so we can finish. We can move the conversation to another regarding another thing. Do you guys have any other question related regarding the wine, so other students can view it?
Just one thing. You mentioned full body for, I think, I'm not sure if it's the first one or the second one.
The
right?
second.
But you still think it's full body?
I think
13% alcohol. It's not that heavy. It's not that concentrated. I think that, I'm not sure. Georgie, were you the one that thought it was full body? I'm not sure who mentioned that.
I said medium plus body.
Okay. Okay.
yeah, I think it's medium plus towards fuller. I think
For
it's
me,
about
for me, medium body, medium alcohol.
Yeah.
I thought that the wine was so balanced, so well done.
it has more tannins than the previous wine, than the first one, and it has more concentration.
Yeah, but what
It has more
was
finish.
well integrated.
Yeah, but having said that,
Maybe affected my perception.
Mhm.
The integration of the wine, the high acidity.
Yeah, the integration is related to quality. So you can say, it's a very good wine because of the balance, the integration, and so on and so on. But I think the body is related to not just alcohol, but concentration and tannins. And I think because of the body, the concentration of flavors and the finish and the concentration of tannins are more towards fuller body as opposed to medium body, or you know what I mean. So, and by comparing them both, I would go like, the second wine is much bigger and heavier and concentrated as opposed to the first wine, which is more vertical in a way. I'm not saying that the first wine is like a medium minus body. No, I think it's medium body, but the lightness of the wine, the lightness of the concentration and so on makes the wine more thinner as opposed to the second wine, which is much bigger. Okay. Okay, so we'll stop recording now. Boa.